Hi, my name is Charlene Miles and I'm Managing Director of the Sirdar Group. So currently I'm on the Sirdar Applied Directorship Programme. Great way to refresh skills, and we, as a first exercise, did an exercise called the 3 hats. It was quite a different thing to read it in the textbook and actually experience it in real life. So it was quite an emotional journey, which you wouldn't think it would be, but it would be. You gave us a scenario and we had to view that with the 3 different hats on. The first hat was the shareholder hat, where you were really focused on how much money you could make and how this group of people were going to increase your profits, obviously. So that was a great, secure place to be. The director hat was a little bit more demanding, where you felt quite pressured. You had to make the right decision in view of all of the stakeholders and be responsible for the company as a whole. And the last was a manager hat, where you actually had to execute what the board had agreed and make sure that all the operational things followed the strategic strategy. So it was quite an emotional journey, as you viewed exactly the same thing but from very different places. So what you were accountable for and what you did and why you did it was very different. An example would be that I attended a couple of board meetings last week. I walked into the boardroom, we all sat down, everything looked normal until we started the meeting. Once we started the meeting, I realized that not everyone around the table actually understood their responsibilities of why they needed to be there. So that was the first complex situation we needed to overcome. The second was I felt like we were rushing the meeting to the extent that we had a limited amount of time and the race was on to see how quickly can we get through the agenda, how quickly can we tick off things and end the meeting and go for lunch. All I felt like people wanted to do was say they're on the board, attend the board meeting, tick it off, and now it's done. Whereas, of course, that wasn't going to add value to the company itself. So about 10 minutes into the meeting, I felt I actually needed to do justice to this particular business, stop the meeting, and try and find out from everyone around the table, why was it that they felt this company had a board to start with? And the next was, once we knew why the company wanted to have the board, why was everybody sitting around the table? So what was their actual contribution to that table? That started a robust conversation, and after about 10 minutes of discussing that, I felt like the energy in the room, the motivation for everyone being there, and the direction the meeting took was totally different. So that for me was a great board meeting with a great outcome, where we had robust conversations about things on the agenda. We reached complex decisions with everyone partaking in the meeting and added real value to being able to make decisions which moved the company forward. So that would just be an example of something that you could learn in the Applied Directorship Programme and apply it in the boardroom successfully. I think another example where I attended the board meeting, one of the first topics was shareholder expectation. And we went through a whole list of what we felt the board was achieving and not achieving, only to realize the shareholders, whom some of them were actually sitting in the room, hadn't actually had shareholder meetings. And therefore, what were we measuring? How could we measure as a board if we were achieving the shareholder expectations or not? Because the shareholders hadn't put on paper what those shareholder expectations were. So hence, it is very important to put these things down on paper, agree them in the light in which you're wearing the correct hat. Going back to the Applied Directorship Programme exercise, where you're distinguishing between a shareholder hat, where you are someone who owns a particular amount of shares in that company, the director hat, where you are responsible to the company and all the stakeholders and making the right decision in terms of all the stakeholders for that business, and the manager hat, which of course you shouldn't be wearing in the boardroom. So the idea is to leave the operational things in the business and make strategic and decisions which affect the strategy and the governance of the company.